Hut, and welcome to another segment of MRH Live. Nick Hines with you, the host, and of course, happy to be joined by my good friend Joe Moran. Great to be back, Joe. What an adventure we had in Ocala this past week, and a big thank you to those that were patient enough for us to come back here on MRH Live on a winning Wednesday.
Yeah, it's good that we're back in full rhythm now. It was a long 2 weeks out there in Ocala, but right when we got back, I couldn't believe it was already Wednesday for the show. So excited to be back, highlight some good things that have been going on, and some new acquisitions as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And congratulations to the MRH partners. I guess we can call it a win streak, right? I mean, Fireball Birdie got the nose down just in time at Oakland. You know, and it's interesting when you have horses in a claiming race and you kind of think to yourself, are they in the right spot? They win by a nose and you get claimed. It's, you know, sometimes it's not the ideal situation, but I think in this case, Fireball Birdie was in the spot to win, and Steve Asserson and his team did a nice job in getting that one home for us.
Yeah, we were watching on an iPhone, and it sure got close at the wire, but sure makes a big difference getting that winning nose bob as well. So, it makes you feel a little bit better about how things went.
Yeah, well done to trainer Mark Glatt and our partner at Muir Hut with a day to remember. It was nice to see that win, certainly posting up a big speed figure. So looking forward to his next step. So great way to, kick off the month of March with all the madness, not only in the horse racing world, but of course, March Madness in basketball. I'm sure many of you will be locked in. Just a reminder for the questions that you sent in, just try to keep them concise and relevant to subject matter, as we will try to encapsulate this next 60 minutes. And a big thank you to Hannah, of course, putting those questions together behind the scenes. So let's get right into it, Joe. We come back from the OBS March sale, and I have to admit that this year it seemed as if the number of freshman sires was pretty prevalent. I mean, there weren't a select number of household top end, so the gun runners, for example, or tappets, so we had to delve a bit. And I have to admit, I'm pretty excited based on what we're able to come up with. But, we do have a proven stallion year in, throughout, and that's a daughter of Practical Joke. But tell us about the process, and, we can kind of go back and forth here for a bit.
Yeah, I think every sale that we go to, no matter what sale it is, it's becoming more and more competitive, especially at the high end, and especially with these 2-year-olds. And we've talked, you and I, about this OBS March sale, and in general, the number of what we would consider high-end colts, there was a lack of numbers, which made it even more competitive, where, I think you really saw a gap between, 350 and 600 plus, and that middle ground, there wasn't a ton, but the expensive horses were there. I mean, we had $5 or $6 million plus horses, if I'm not mistaken, and some of those being by freshman stallions, which is a gamble. It's always a gamble when we buy a horse in general, but it's always positive to see that money being so strong in the game. But I really think we did a great job in terms of getting quality physicals, and at the end of the day, the 2-year-old sale, being able to see these horses perform is such an advantage. We did come out with a few freshman stallions, and then, as you said, a proven stallion and Practical Joke.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap in each individual horse, and the first hip that we did purchase, 333, that daughter of Practical Joke out of the Dam Seaworthy, from the Niall Brennan consignment, just a gorgeous specimen. I think for her, the fact that she breezed, in 10 flat, she did it with consummate ease with a nice stride length. I was pretty impressed with her gallop out, but more than anything, I think just her overall composure, back at the barn, just a sweet filly, and kind of reminiscent of a filly that we got involved with years back in Microshare, who went on to do some good things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was kind of a queen back there. It's funny. I looked back the first day of inspections when I started on Saturday. Well, you finished clocking the final day, getting a head start. She had pulled out, and I took a video of one horse just because she really was that. It it was photo worthy. She just has that pretty look to her and good disposition. Beautiful filly. If she had a stronger female side of her family, she's probably a $600,000-700,000 horse, and I truly believe that. She performs. She has a lot of flatter in her. She's got that pretty look from flatter. But Practical Joke continues to throw quality dirt horses and what we were looking for. And to be able to secure her and come to the West Coast to a trainer like Bob Baffert, I think she's going to fit into that program great.
Yeah, I get especially excited when I see the Phipps family in the pedgree, the Storm Flag Flying, My Flag. I mean, this goes back to some truly great horses and, grade one contenders. So I think that's the flip side of the coin here is that when you look at the dam, this is the first foal out of the dam. And, again, it's a relatively young family. So that may have saved us on the coin. And, as you pointed out, I mean, there were 7 horses that sold for $1 million or more, tying an OBS March record. Not to mention that the average price rose to $162,000 per individual. So
yeah,
highly competitive. I personally think, just based on sheer numbers, I think this was a tremendous look here for the price point. All right, well, moving on. You mentioned difficulty of trying to find a colt, and I'm especially excited the fact that we were able to acquisition this guy, hip number 361 by Happy Saver. Just a powerhouse of an individual from the Scanland training consignment. And we also purchased Caldera. So hopefully a little bit of luck there. A mare that's been pretty productive. And being a May foal, this horse could very well be the tip of the iceberg. This one, of course, the son of the freshman sire, Happy Saver, trained by the one and only Todd Pletcher.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, mentioning of the May foal, and he's a May 20th foal on top of it. To be able to do what he did in the first week of March in terms of breezing and have that forwardness mentally to handle the sale, I thought was super impressive. We went there with a plan to buy a colt for Todd Pletcher. Not that it really matters, but to find one by a stallion that Todd trained in Happy Saver, I think that was a big point of us being able to afford him based off his physical, because he, like you said, was a powerhouse colt. I think he has the potential to really develop into an extremely nice horse.
Yeah, I think when you look at the pedigree in itself, there are multiple horses that, were Triple Crown looks, namely Social Inclusion, horse that many were familiar with, who had finished third in the Preakness, had a pretty solid career in his own right. And then Morello, who, won the Gotham and early on, of course, was trained by Steve Asmussen. So there's enough precocity. And regardless of the fact that we're dealing with a freshman sire, I think there's plenty of anticipation there. And here's the bottom line. We call Todd. Todd, what were your thoughts on the Happy Saver? Nice colt, beautiful colt. Good news. You're training him. Couldn't be happier. So that's a good thing. So it's always nice when the trainer kind of compliments and corroborates our thought process anyway. As far as the next up acquisition, the daughter of, or son of Epicenter, this was another horse that being a later foal, I thought that on physical, a tremendous athlete, a New York bred, a little extra special there. This horse is a May 11th. And we often talk about price points and trying to get horses purchased at the right level for 150,000. Yet another horse that I think was an astute buy by the freshman sire Epicenter, whom many got to know, having won the Travers, among finishing second in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. I'm excited for the stallion quite a bit.
Yeah, me too. And I think his sales results as a whole really showed for it in March. I believe he is going to be responsible for 29 horses cataloged in April as well. It's in the upper 20s. It's funny how some things work, but, arguably one of the strongest pedigrees of, close family is this Epicenter colt. And it was the cheapest horse we purchased. Love what he did on the track. As you said, I do think he has a lot of room to grow. Whereas the Happy Saver, he kind of looks the part now while he's still going to mature. I think this Epicenter colt really is going to do a lot of changing and developing in that May frame. But you have an exciting sibling in Fingal's Cave, who's multiple stakes placed in open company as well. So, to get into a pedigree like this, an exciting young stallion, I think he's going to do a world of good. And we've been working to try to get a horse for Rob Falcone for the syndicate share model. So we're super excited about that. We have had launched that with Safi and Mystical Bell, who runs in a stake this Sunday. And then also in California with Burn Rate and Raging Inferno, the syndicate shares went over really well. So excited to introduce that to the East Coast. And I think Rob Falcone will be a great addition for communication. A lot of you that like Dan Blacker and what he's provided in updates, I think we'll be able to get a lot of similar aspects from Rob.
Yeah, Rob being present at the sale, I think, is also a bonus. It's we found it with Safi Joseph Jr., Todd Pletcher obviously being there. There are instances where trainers who would essentially get these horses wouldn't necessarily be on the ground. So the fact that he put his stamp of approval was willing. I mean, clearly the countless horses that we looked at with Rob, I think speaks volumes that we're able to land this colt. And I think the other point, Joe, for those that are tuned in here at my Racehorse Live, MRH Live, and again, we appreciate your support and, of course, coming in as team members. When you look at a pedigree page and you can only squeeze the first two dams in, and you see the multiple black type among graded stakes winners, for me, that's a huge positive. And, considering that the mother, she's only 13 years of age. So it's not as if she's a, 20-year-old mare and you're like, well, no wonder you can only squeeze the two in. The truth is these horses that are pedigreed up here are, I'm as excited about this 2-year-old group as any, in particular, the fact that we got the ball rolling and tipped off in March. I think this is as strong as we've started with MyRacehorse since I've come on board, and I'm sure you could attest.
Yeah, absolutely. It went from after day one that I got a little concerned that the market was going to be so strong
Right.
on the horses, and to come out like we did the final 2 days, I couldn't have been happier.
All right. Well, as far as the
I'm going to touch
offering,
on one other thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I know we will get a lot of questions on it. One other purchase in the sale. You will see that coming soon, but those three that we talked about, be on the lookout tomorrow to pop out for indicate interest. And don't be alarmed, you will see the other one in the near future as well.
All right, excellent. And looking forward to seeing those, and could be some early Easter eggs for you folks out there once they come out. We're always looking for the golden egg. Hopefully we've already acquisitioned at least 1 or 2, maybe 3, possibly 4. But it was a successful sale. And, big thank you to you, Joe. And, of course, Matt O'Connor, Brian DiDonato. I love our team. And I know that it's a labor of love. And sometimes, those days in March can get difficult, especially this year. I mean, it's pretty warm. You got to admit, right?
I got a little sunburn. So, usually I don't get burnt, but I got burnt.
Yeah, well, it was well and worth that. So looking forward to it. Keep an eye on those to indicate interest. And again, we appreciate your participation. And moving on, some saddening news on a somber note. And this just happened within the last 24 hours. And while we were so excited to give updates on the newborns and the mares and their health, Joe, it was a couple of nights ago, Lazara. Tell us about the situation there.
So it was actually yesterday morning, 4:30. Lazara pulled out a beautiful Prince of Monaco filly on the bigger side, and everything looked to be pretty straightforward after the initial foaling. Nicole had given me a call, and just didn't think the mare was really acting herself, and you kind of give them a little time after giving birth, but we had a vet come over. They had recommended getting her to the clinic right away, and we just knew something was amiss, but there was nothing obvious. Later discovered that she had a twisted cecum, which is most comparable to a human's appendix. So it is colic related, but it was a very tough one, and unfortunately, we just had to do the most humane thing for the horse. It would have been a very tough recovery with a big if and potentially a worse outcome for her at the end of the day. So we do not take those things lightly. It was the last thing we want to have to deal with. And we have two partners on that horse, friends of the program, and Nick Stamatis and Ken Miles, who I'm sure some of you have met through their time at MyRacehorse. So never good. And it's truly, of sending someone a note, and we always talk about the highs and lows of horse racing, and that couldn't have been a bigger example of the highest of the highs and the lowest and the lows of getting two healthy foals, because we also did have Littlest Warrior provide us a healthy Vacoma colt, technically the same day. Both babies were born on March 17th. So it's a really tough moment. Yeah, it's going to be hard, but the great news is the baby is doing great. She got acclimated here. You'll see her. This is her getting up. And then she was just recently introduced to what is going to be her nurse mare. And this is what's going to have to happen. And the transition has been pretty seamless this far. So that's always a good thing. You never know how that's going to happen. But Mr. Clovis, or Slovis, that's the surgeon at Haggard, has been raving about your filly. And has only had positive things to say about her and how she's handled this. So we are hopeful that Lazara left us with a very special horse at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. Yeah, but I know that, just for me personally, having grown up, on a ranch and having seen the process, and just knowing as an owner breeder myself, it's as we see Littlest Warrior here, just a picture of health and beauty. And Lazara baby obviously looks as if she's got some size and scope to her. But this is why, as we go through it all, we just really count our blessings when things go well. They're nothing to take for granted. From a breeding perspective, it's a process, right? And clearly, you hope that everything checks off just right. And it's unfortunate for Lazara, but again, not having to suffer anymore for her, clearly the best thing. Not something that we know she couldn't have endured, because clearly she was on the wrong end. So, our condolences on behalf of all of us at MyRacehorse. Our thoughts and prayers, and I will just light a candle here that this baby you see on your screen will go on and do great things, and rest be assured, I think the chances are great. So where do we stand in general with the foaling of the mares? Or do we have another mare? Are we just pretty much foaled out now?
We are foaled out now.
Okay.
So we were almost perfect, but we are 3 for 3 perfect of having 3 healthy foals on the ground from the newest broodmare band. Community adjusted fold out. Tiffany's Mo did get in foal successfully, 2 locked. We still have something that we have to monitor and continue to recheck her. Right. Choke Cece was bred to Yalpon. She was rechecked. She was not in foal, so we're going to have to get her bred back to Yalpon. Isle Blue, I know, just given everything yesterday, I wasn't able to get the update out yesterday, but I had posted an update a few days ago that she was on schedule to be bred yesterday. That did happen to Seize the Gray. So we move forward there. So everything is moving forward. Littlest Warrior, when she's ready, will be bred back to Seize the Gray.
All right. Big thank you to Tiny Marshmallows who came in. What's the backstory for the nurse mare of Lazara? Would you share that info with us sometime in the future? I'm sure that's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get some more information there. It was actually provided. You work through Haggard, through the clinic, to get that nurse mare. They allow that whole transition phase and acclimation period for the foal and mare to really sync up and become a pair and a team at the clinic, and then she'll come home tomorrow. But we'll absolutely provide more along that in that process, when she gets back to the farm.
Yeah, big thank you to our farm residents there. Perhaps you could give a shout out to a few names that have really kind of gone above and beyond to kind of make this a seamless process.
Yeah, absolutely. December Farm, it's been our first go around with these 3 mares there, and we now obviously have used them with a few others, but Nicole there has done a great job with our whole stock. She obviously did everything she could there for Lazara. That was just an unfortunate event that, you know, couldn't be prevented. But I know, for me, it makes my job and our team's job a lot easier to have someone
Oh yeah.
provide all these videos for us and for the owners to be able to experience every step of the way, right? And I think she's done a tremendous job for us from there. So I hope all the owners, I know we've seen plenty of emails to pass along thanks, but I do hope it is greatly appreciated because it's very cool, right? I mean, I think, you know, we're so used to buying yearlings, 2-year-olds, and that's where the dream starts, but it really does start from day one of the foaling. So it's very fun. And, you know, to be able to see these one day run, if we're lucky enough, and, you know, potentially own 1 or 2 of them throughout the way, would be quite a ride.
Yeah, I think this is, to me, if you have the patience, this is probably the best part of the game, and seeing the process. I think even if you're involved in the mares, you know, as a partner, whereas we go to these yearlings and 2-year-old sales, I think you take a greater appreciation for it when things go well, because inevitably in this game, I mean, clearly it's like any other sport, but you know, we often compare horse racing to baseball, right? I mean, if you're batting 300, you're Hall of Fame material. So if you're winning 3 out of 10 in the horse racing game, you're doing something right. So, you know, obviously our goal and our intent is to try to win every race, but more importantly, we want your experience to be batting at least 100%. That's what we're hopeful of. And look, if you've got, you know, comments, opinions, you know, I've had an opportunity to kind of go through the message boards, you know, and I think for the most part, people are optimistic, and, you know, they tend to be on the positive side of things. And I also understand the frustration. We had it in the last show, you know, brought to light one individual that had said that this was virtually the kind of the end of owning horses. But, you know, again, it's a matter of choice. And this is the game we do, and the game we love, and the game we live. So, again, we'll keep you updated, and it'd be interesting to see how things work out with the nurse mare, and our best wishes to this daughter of Lazara. All right, Joe, as we proceed, what's always nice about getting together at sales with not only ourselves and kind of catching up and scouting future prospects, but also meeting up with trainers. And we did have an opportunity, a multiple occasion to speak with Safi Joseph Jr., in which we had the little interview posted out in the madness of the process there at the sale. Not easy to do. So Caldera, this is a recent workout just 5 days ago, and a little bit of a stretch here, going a half mile.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see from the get-go, he's tugging that rider along pretty good. And that was something that Safi was kind of explaining to us of his approach here with Caldera and his patience and all the work, not only on work day, but what he's trying to get him to accomplish in his gallops. He just said he is a very enthusiastic training horse. And if you let him go out there and gallop, he'll gallop along in 12 seconds, which is almost equivalent to a 2-minute lick, or is a 2-minute lick. And you know, his whole goal has been able to get him to try to slow down to 14 seconds, 15 seconds a furlong in the gallops, which is still fairly strong. But, you know, in order to get him to be what he believes is going to be the best horse, that's what he needed to get him to do. He's made a lot of progress and felt very comfortable. That's why we're seeing these works start to ramp back up. But he feels, you know, next month we're going to start looking at a race at Gulfstream. So, you know, I think that's always excited, but you could just tell in the tone of his voice and the way he was talking about Caldera that he matches our excitement for him and what we think he can accomplish this year.
Yeah, I think the window is wide open there. And, you know, he mentioned from a condition standpoint, you know, for those that are curious about, well, you know, he's already multiple stakes placed. Would he come back in a stake? No. The idea is to come back in an entry-level allowance and allow him to graduate upward. I mean, considering the fact that, you know, he last raced, it'll be April of last year. It doesn't seem like it's that long. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, with the passing of D. Wayne and the point that we gave this horse a little extra time to get healthy, I think that's the other part of what I love about the Safi Joseph story here with Caldera is that he kept talking about legacy, right? He wants this horse to kind of keep that legacy alive with Coach D. Wayne. And, you know, we kind of see it even on the jockey side of things with Jaime Torres, who won the Virginia Derby aboard Incredibolt. And there was an immediate tie-in to Seize the Gray on, of course, winning the Preakness here a couple of years ago. So Coach D. Wayne is everywhere. But in regards to Saffie Joseph, he's pretty adamant, and he's confident that he can get this horse to come back and fire some big shots and hopefully win some great stakes for us.
Yeah, that would be a great result for me. So I'm not going to complain with that ending. But as you said, entry-level allowance, his last 3 races, though they were in stakes, straight 3-year-olds. Now he's going to face older horses. That's always a challenge, as horses face olders. So you give him the easiest path to build himself back up to then take the big swing. So hopefully he'll have plenty of those swings in his future.
All right. Big thank you to Anna. Appreciate you tuning in as far as Tiny Marshmallows, ICOFU 9016. Thank you very much. And in regards to runners on the horizon, look, we're trying to keep a win streak here, and certainly no better time than now. Obviously, reflecting on Caldera and the fact that he's likely our flagship, at least at this point in time. We've got a couple of fillies that will be starting in South Florida this weekend. Speaking of Saffie Joseph Jr., for me, I just love Saffie's accessibility. We try not to, as an ownership group, we try not to take that for granted. But we're going to get to that in a moment. Let's get into Munny Problem. This, of course, horse that debuted. I know there was a lot of anticipation going into the debut, and for some, you walked away disappointed. And, clearly one of the most difficult things to do is getting a horse to break their maiden on debut. He ended up at 4-1, February 27th. A bit green, much like the turf he was on after a poor beginning. What's the latest on Munny Problem for Mr. Trombetta?
Yeah, he came out of that race in good order, had an easy breeze earlier this week on the 15th. And he's going to ship to Fairhill, where Mike's main base is this time of the year, now that that's back in full swing. And that's going to give us options. I know I've seen some messages, saying, is that meaning he's now tier B versus tier A in that barn? And absolutely not is the answer. And, I tried my best when we made this decision to say why we went to Michael Trombetta. I think he's a trainer that we obviously had success with Rosie's Alibi, but he gives us so many options with what he is able to offer in his location, having strings at Keeneland, Saratoga, and then his main base at Fairhill. So going to Laurel for his next start, the main reason was for the turf course. That Gulfstream Park turf course is a very hard and firm turf course, and they just felt he would benefit from having a little bit of give. At the same time, the turf course won't really get into full swing at Laurel until mid-April. And Michael said as long as he comes in there well, if he trains well over the dirt, this first work we're seeing on the screen was a very easy. You'll see him crossing the wire pretty much under wraps. But if he continues to work well, he's not going to be afraid to take a look at a 3-year-old dirt maiden special weight at Laurel. They, this time of year, typically come up with short fields if they go. And if that's a great way to kind of get some experience and gauge him on the dirt, I think it's a great avenue for us to just see if we can go both surfaces. But at the end of the day, and, as we touched about going into his debut, they felt pretty confident and compelled from his works that turf was going to be his main surface. But I just think it gives us a lot of options.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be my question. We've heard, the commentary regarding turf and turf again. I mean, the fact of the matter is when you look at the mare, the brunt of her success was on grass. And then you kind of work your way into the pedigree a bit, and it does appear as if it has some turf flair to it. But I think more importantly, I think it's just a matter of this horse kind of, getting on track. Look, he's only had one start. Clearly, after the poor beginning, things didn't necessarily work in his favor. It's not an easy thing to do. And if your question is, well, isn't it really, really hard to run a horse a mile on a turf first time out? Those races tend to take less out of them. And I think when you look back at the dynamic of that race, the winner ended up going gate to wire. And then when you consider the field, he was giving up a lot of experience. So I think it's great. You know, he gets back up to the Mid-Atlantic. I think you're going to have plenty of options. You have multiple tracks there, which you can pivot off of. And, you know, I still have faith that he will evolve. So don't judge the horse by its cover. Don't forget Secretariat lost his first start. Not saying he's Secretariat, but, you know, horses don't have to win on their debut. And sometimes it's a curse versus a blessing. It's tough when horses break their maiden first out.
Didn't American Pharaoh run 7th, beating the double-digit lengths on debut?
Yeah. And that's I think that's when they went to the cotton, or they pulled the cotton, or they did whatever.
It worked, whatever they did.
All right. So we have questions coming in. A big thank you to those that are taking their time out on this Wednesday. And hopefully these Wednesday live shows are working for you. We thought that, you know, it'd be a nice way to kind of break up your work week, not to mention the timing of it. And clearly, you know, our goal with these shows is to try and bring as much to the table and answering questions that you may have. And unfortunately, we can't always get to every question that you send in, but clearly trying to get to the best of our knowledge. What are your feelings regarding the future of A Day to Remember, as we saw that last win? What would be the next step for him? And could this horse evolve into a stakes horse, Joe?
I don't want to say never, but I would probably lean against it. Right. Okay. And I'm just saying that based off his numbers and what he's done. I mean, he's always been a horse that's went out in the mornings and been very impressive. He's had his fair share of setbacks. He is a 5-year-old that's only run 7 times. Knock on wood, he's doing well right now. You know, I still would have, as happy as I was that he won the other day, and you know my confidence level on his first race back off the layoff. I thought we were a winner that day, and I was slightly disappointed that he just didn't have that kick in the final stages that we needed. But it was nice to see him come back, second start off a brief layoff, and back himself up with a win there. Still think to take that next level, we're kind of in a tricky spot here, just condition book wise. We take a week off after April 5th. We take a week off from racing at Santa Anita and don't come back till the 18th. So it's only 3 racing days, but, you know, 2 weeks at the end of the day there. And the logical plan for him would be to now run in a starter non-winners of 3 condition. So just 1 level up from what he did. And we have the ability to do that because we ran him for that $50,000 claiming tag 2 back, and that allows us to protect him. So in a perfect world, that's where you'd want to run this horse. We don't have that option in the condition book. Will it get written as an extra? Maybe. When you look at the first level allowances, the last one was run on February 21st. It was won by Yakovlev with an 89 buyer speed figure. He is a hard knocking, hard trier for Jeff Mullins. You know, we won that starter allowance with a 76 buyer. So there's a big gap there. Not saying he doesn't deserve the chance, but in order for him to compete, even just at the next open allowance level, he's going to have to take a step forward. You know, we've debated for a while now trying him back on the dirt based off how good his breezes were. That's where we debuted him. Don't want to count that off the table. We'll never get a starter non-3 to go at Santa Anita on the dirt. Unfortunately, it just would be, I think, too hard for that race to fill. But we may get it on the turf. So right now we're kind of in a pause period. He should hop back on the work tab this weekend. But in terms of race schedule, we don't have anything really locked in at this moment.
All right. So chances are he's not going to race at Keeneland next month.
He's not. If we're going to have any horses run at Keeneland, I think that's still up in the air. I think we just need to see how some things go here in these last couple weeks. There's no definitive plans on anyone at this moment. We should have Doctorate ship into Keeneland. He will not be ready for those 2-year-old races there, but we should get him up there to start training as well.
Yeah, I do note Baccio. I did see that he showed up on the tab, 11 days ago?
Yep.
Was that an accurate drill, 47 and change?
It was an accurate drill. So he came in pretty fit off the farm. You know, Wesley did say it's just taking him a little bit to kind of acclimate back to the track. Nothing of concern, but he just kind of decided, you know, we wanted to work him with that race this Saturday the Texas Glitter as a potential consideration. Okay. We talked about it, I believe, on the last show that we opted, to bypass that race. So that decision was made pretty early. But still, like we said, there is such a big year ahead for this horse and so many race options. There's no reason to rush and not have him fully ready to go. He certainly could be one that could consider Keeneland, but we would need to see him kind of now back on a consistent work tab in the near future to make that happen.
All right. And in regards to a mistrial, I know, big thank you, Michael. Appreciate you sending that in. Mistrial, she is currently in kind of recuperating. I thought the post that you'd went up, visit her at the farm, the process as far as getting her back to the track. How long are we looking at as far as a timeline as of today, March 18th?
Yeah, so her second stint of 60 days. So the 120-day mark was yesterday. So she'll get rescanned this week. Talked to Katie Fisher yesterday of Kingfisher. So that is scheduled to take place this week when they can get Dr. Hamer out there. And once that happens, we'll likely probably start her on the Eurosizer there just because she's been off for so long, just to get a little bit going on and get her moving a little bit before we send her back. But she is going to have to start from square one with that amount of time off. But, the plan would be to get her back to Mike Marlowe, Bob Baffert's assistant at Los Alamitos.
Yeah, everything works well. I mean, I think that if the scan comes back, she's able to get on the Eurosizer, she's going to jog. I mean, we're probably looking, a late summer in the perfect world of imperfection as far as maybe getting her back to the races. Is that feasible?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely feasible. I mean, even though she is a Constitution's coming from that Tappet line, they're not always big strapping horses like many people kind of think and associate him with.
Right.
And I would say she's average size, very athletic, a reason why we loved her at the yearling sale at Keeneland. So I don't think it will take her that long, but saying that, she's eating very well at the farm, so she's carrying good flesh. So she will have to shed off those extra pounds she's gotten at the farm.
We got to tell Katie Fisher to close the buffet early.
Exactly.
Well, good. I mean, her running line looks pretty good. Having finished second to a champion last time we saw her, so yeah, it will be a wonderful thing if we're able to get her back in the swing of things. And some wonderful commentary coming across. We appreciate your positive support. We're happy to be back as well, trying to cover as much as we can within our segment here for MRH Live. All right, let's move on to the weekend. Starting Friday, Joe, we've got Love Like Lucy back in. And the question was, the timing of getting her back into a race. I know there were a few that had concerns, what's taking so long? How is she doing? I think this race sets up pretty well for her. I mean, the patients could pay it forward. Nice little purse here, $54,000. She's been dispatched 9 to 5 in the morning line. That's race 6 on Friday, 3:31 Eastern. So in between your March Madness basketball, you'll have to tune in for this at 6 furlongs, a field of 6. So nice, concise field, and a filly that certainly looks to be setting up nicely. And Tyler Gaffleone in the irons, and he wins 28% of the time for our trainer, Safi Joseph.
Yeah, absolutely. You never are going to complain when you get Tyler in the irons. I think one thing I just want to note, she's a filly that we purchased at the 2-year-old in training sales, went right on into training, practically ran 5 consecutive months in a row: August 8th, September 6th, October 18th, November 29th, January 10th. So this little freshening and gap between races, even though we were looking at a turf option, and that was the initial plan, to be able to find this spot and give her a little extra time, in my opinion, it's a dream spot, right? To get a Florida bred straight 3-year-old filly allowance race, she's right. 9 to 5 for a reason on the morning line, given her form. And I think it's a great opportunity for her. And I think it'll give us a great baseline of where she's at. After breaking her maiden, we ran in 4 consecutive stake races, 3 of those being Florida bred stake races, but open company, the most recent time at Tampa Bay. So it's going to be a major class relief for her, and it'll give us a good gauge of where she's at.
Yeah, I think that, just looking at the overall pace dynamic of that race, I think she has enough speed to engage. Her time form pace rating of a 97 is not the fastest. Clearly, those 2 horses on the outside are carrying fast numbers. Do you think she can rate and finish, or do you think she's one that likely has to be in front.
No, I think she can absolutely rate and finish, and I think the cut back to 6 furlongs will help her do that. Just so maybe those two outside runners will just naturally be faster, and then allow her to get in a rhythm. I think as we kind of stretched her out in distance, that first time when she ran 7/8, when Mythical kind of ran off the screen. It was kind of instructions that we were trying to be aggressive in there, and we thought we had to be close, and Mythical really didn't get away the cleanest, and that's what was our thought of being able to beat her. And we ran to win. It didn't work, and it, maybe cost us a little bit more, but still running second. There's no harm, no foul. And then most recently, or when she ran 7 furlongs at Tampa Bay, she wasn't quite quick enough, but she just never really settled and got in a rhythm. So
Right.
I think getting that little refresher on top of it, she'll hopefully be able to come in here, let that outside speed go. Tyler Gaffleone does have some softer hands, which hopefully will get her to relax too.
All right, that's a 10 race card on Friday. Reminder, Love Like Lucy in race number 6, number 3 of 6, dispatched 9 to 5 on the morning line, approximate post time, 12:31 Eastern, and 12:31 here on the left coast, 3:31, 12:31. Hopefully a few of you may be able to make it out there. I think it'll be a perfect day to get a picture taken. So let's go, Love Like Lucy. All right, moving on to Sunday. We stay in that same stable with Saffie Joseph Jr. And this race did not come up easy, Joe Moran. And certainly the return of Lenny Lou. Best of luck to my racehorse associate, Caitlin. Of course, she comes in with Lenny Lou's coming off of a 7th place finish in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint. This is the Leinster Melody of Color. So, as you know, Lenny Lou is by Leinster. So, is this a race that's tailor fit for her, or can we spoil the apple cart with Mystical Belle?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Lenny Lou is the well-deserving favorite and an ultra-talented filly. Most recently, last seen facing the boys in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint. So, is she going to be tough to beat? Absolutely. She's 2 for 2 over this 5 furlong turf course at Gulfstream Park. But saying that, Saffie from the get-go with Mystical Belle, after she broke her maiden, he started saying, I can't wait to see her on the turf, and said, I really think if she can develop into a stakes filly, it's going to be on the turf. So, I think he's got a lot of confidence. We're coming in off with back-to-back wins. She's fresh. She's competitive. And I just think she's got a chance to step up and do it. Lenny Lou has drawn the rail. It's never easy, and God forbid you don't break. I don't wish that upon Caitlin by any means. But those are the realistic factors. If you're going to beat her, that's kind of something that you need to happen, I think, to beat her today. And, we'll just see, we did freshen her up of just giving her a break from the work tab in Mystical Belle. I thought this last work that we're seeing now, you could tell Saffie was trying to tighten the screws here and make sure, she's fit and ready to go for this event. It is 5 furlongs, so we don't need to do too much, but, he feels pretty confident.
Well, the good news is she comes in with some of the best experience. She's riding a 2-race win streak. When you consider the fact that this is a 10-horse field, this is the 8th race on that 10-race card on Sunday, approximate post 4:24 Eastern, 1:24 on the left, and you can do the central math. I think the horse of interest, I know you and Brian will cover the race analysis on this, but I love Giraffes for Chad Summers, $200,000 Kilo September yearling. The visual on her was pretty solid. And boy, she rolled up the inside. She absolutely handled the turf with no issue. The temp that day is supposed to be around 80, so it will stay on the turf, but to exit, say, best last out by her speed figure of a 78. She's drawn exceptionally well there. I think we're right there in the money considering that we are sharp. I don't think Lenny Lou has to win this race. And I mean, I'm staring at that 58 bullet, best of 30, but I feel like she's going to need to get the trip considering how deep this field is. I mean, it's a contentious race.
Yeah, I'm familiar with 5 furlong turf races at Del Mar over the summer. We always say, we were actually just talking about it at dinner in Ocala, that if you were to bet $2 on the longest shot in 5 furlong turf races at Del Mar throughout the entire meet,
Yeah.
you'd most likely come out profitable by the end of the meet, because these races a lot of times are one out of the gate. One mistake can cost you the race in these type of events. So
Right.
you need everything to go in your favor. I love Giraffes. I think it's an obvious contender. There does appear to be enough pace for that horse to sit and make a run. Facing winners and to go an event like this in your second career start is a big challenge. We always say that, as we were talking about Munny Problem earlier. Sometimes winning on debut is the worst thing you could do, because the water gets deep right away. But as you said, you have to note the visual on that horse. Charlatan is seems to be really picking things up here as a stallion, and this looks like another exciting one by Charlatan.
Yeah, you see the question here from Brian in regard to does Safi and Willie run all 4 entries? I don't see why he wouldn't. Sometimes you kind of get into a spot where you can't find a proper race from a condition standpoint. Again, we didn't get any intel as to whether or not he will run all 4, but we're hopeful that he at least runs one, and the one that matters most. And that's Mystical Bell.
Yeah, and I'll say this is a very common thing of Safi to do. As you noted, that they weren't supplemented. Sometimes he likes to be a little coy with that at the moment. So all 4 were not, or all 4 were supplemented. They weren't nominated to the race, and then entered all 4. Through the kickers days, I think he did that where he entered 4 in the same race, scratched 3 of them. So he really looks at these races, analyzes every horse's chance, and he's going to run the ones that he think can have a chance to win or crack the board. Because at the end of the day, these are fillies. A stakes placing helps a resume.
Yeah, it certainly does. Good luck to Mystical Bell. Stevie B says he didn't win the paddock lottery, but he's going to be there for Love Like Lucy on Friday, and we certainly appreciate this. Don't win a lottery doesn't mean you should be there. I mean, clearly part of owning a horse is being participatory. I know, Joe, when you're paying bills on horses, the last thing, if you have a chance to get off the track and not go, shame on you, because this is what it's all about. I mean, these are like having your children going into a sporting event, and if you can get there, get out there, because there's no feeling like it. There's a slight chance of rain on Friday, but it's certainly not going to affect what we are doing. Prez comes in with the questions on commission. The horse certainly will come back, I think, stronger than ever. What's the latest on commission?
Yep, he's just on R&R, so I hate to say it's a lot of nothing at this moment, but without having my spreadsheet in front of me, I think we're looking at kind of a May 1st type return. So he needed 90 days off, so we're kind of right at that midway point, I believe. But all is well. I saw him a few weeks ago. Looks great. He's a little fired up there. So, he certainly doesn't think anything's wrong. And as I said, what we were doing was more precautionary than anything to prevent something serious from happening. And unfortunately, and fortunately, with modern technology now and PET scans, we are way more advanced of diagnosing things before they actually happen. And unfortunately, time heals all. So just got to give him that time. I'm sure I'm going to try to get up there to check on him before the April sales, and we'll have more to share.
All right, Christina, curious about Elevated. Obviously, Joe, among our work at the sale and scouting future prospects, we were able to spend some time out there with Kieran Dunn and watching the process. I love it. It's just a little bit of a mental break for us as well, to kind of break the hustle and bustle of the scouting situation. But what is your prognostication on Elevated? Will we make a race this year?
Yeah, very tough to say. I say with all of our 2-year-olds, we're hopeful right now that all make it to the races as 2-year-olds. Some develop a little slower, I would say. I think warranted burn rate probably going to be a little bit more of slower developers, just their size, what they're going to do, and the way they're made. But Elevated, we've always thought she'd be an early type. Saying that, we haven't even hit any speed work yet. So Kieran said he's planning on starting her with some speed work later this week. And his only fear is that she was going to go too fast. So not a bad problem to have there. But the reports were super positive. Unfortunately, it's just too early to tell. And I think that's to say with all the 2-year-olds is that, their race schedule, it's too early to tell. We got to see them go through these initial speed work trials and then transition to the racetrack. The real pressure starts getting added there. So as we see these 2-year-olds transition to the racetrack, that's going to kind of guide us in the direction that we go. Doctorate is probably the most advanced, I would say, at this stage, and just his work since coming off is a little fresher. And he'll head to Keeneland and hopefully get right into the swings of things. But the reports on him have been all extremely positive. So another one, I'm excited about. Obviously, we're biased that we like all of the babies that we've bought that haven't run, but it's easy to do that when you see them and they look the part.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated. Clearly, as we looked at the babies, just kind of seeing the changes they've made. Good, bad, or indifferent, because they, I think for the most part, horses kind of do go through an ugly phase. They're not always the beautiful yearling that you purchased, or even in the 2-year-olds. They just go through the process of growing and changing. And our job is to try and manage it so that when they do come to the racetrack, to these trainers, that they're fit and ready to move forward. Brian, I thought this was a very good question in regard to Love Like Lucy, because you can see that L in the DRF, a circle, meaning that Love Like Lucy is on LASIK. So was there an issue here, Joe, or is this because we can run on it, we're taking the preventative stance? I've always said that it's better to prepare and prevent as opposed to repair and repent. So we'd hate for her to bleed, having the option of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say this is probably one of my favorite betting angles in general as well, when a horse gets LASIX for the first time. So I think it's a situation where it can only be beneficial, and why be at a disadvantage if every other horse is going to use it. So to me, it's an easy answer to run with LASIX.
All right, that's good. And hopefully, here's the deal, Brian, in regards to that, this won't be the first time that she's ever been on LASIX. I've had interesting conversation with various trainers, but these horses have been tried on it as babies. And I did have an opportunity to speak to one trainer, unnamed, because I'm always curious, especially with fillies and sometimes mares that they've never been on LASIX. When they get LASIX for the first time, it tends, because LASIX is designed it's a diuretic. It's tend to bring their blood pressure down so that they wouldn't in turn bleed, because that's where the blood pressure goes up, the corpuscles, and that's where they bleed internally and essentially don't have enough oxygen and can't compete to the next level. But the other point of which is that when all of the other horses are on LASIX, then in this case, if you tried it and the horse seems to be okay with it, probably wise to stay on LASIX. But they will, as babies, give them a trial run. Not always an injectable, sometimes a LASIX pill, which is I'm a bigger fan of the oral drug as opposed to injectables. For me, I'm skittish of needles as it is anyway, but as a former trainer, I would always always do wonder about that, and horses, and we could go into a whole diatribe. And it's interesting to look at horses of Christmas past. There was a time back in the 60s and 70s where, like steroids, for example, equipoise, Winstrol, testosterone, these things were all legal. Obviously not now. And there's been the great debate up in New York in regards to LASIX and HISA. There's a lot going on out there in the world of horse racing, much less the entire world as it stands. But that's a very good question. All right, Richard gets right to the point here, Joe Moran. Find a race. Did you find a race from My Eyes on You yet?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, nothing changed from the update a few days ago. And I'll just kind of actually expand a little bit more on that. So we had the most recent 6 furlong maiden special weight on grass. We think that's going to be the key for this horse. He has, I would say, and I think you would agree with me, that he has taken a step forward in his works the last 3 weeks. And I think that foot popping that abscess, I think that was really just kind of nagging at him, and that has helped him. He still carries that knee action over the main track. Hopefully the turf will level him off, but clearly seen a lot of improvements. He's fit. He just wasn't quite ready for that race on March 15th. Now, when we look at the condition book, straight 3-year-olds, we have no sprint option until April 5th. And the route race is 9 furlongs. If it was a flat mile, it's maybe something that we could consider debut him going a mile. I do think long term he's probably a 2-turn horse. It's not really Mark Latt style to start around 2 turns on debut, or if he does, it's typically not a great sign if that's the case. So he was confident enough to sprint for the first time. We're just going to have to figure out where that race may be. We could try 3 and up. You know, we always do say 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds that are maidens at this point, you can't really be scared of them. But my thinking's always, if you have the ability to run against straight 3-year-olds, take advantage of that.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, clearly this horse went also through a growth spurt. I mean, he had plenty of scope to him anyway, but he's a tall drink of water as an individual.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I mean, not all horses, Joe. I mean, I will say this about what Mark Latt's done with this horse. He's tested him. I mean, putting that horse on the inside and, you know, his workouts on paper. I think that we're kind of our own worst critic with horses. And I know that even as we go out and scout, we have this great anticipation. These horses are going on to do great things. I mean, clearly, if we could go to every sale and find a Seize the Gray or a straight no chaser, life would be grand. But I have this sneaky suspicion that, you know, big things are ahead. So hopefully we can ring into those big weekends, big results. My racehorse. All right, let's talk about, go back to the mare front. Also, there was a question that popped up regarding Classic Cut racing at Oaklawn. That race is on Thursday, correct, Joe?
Yes, tomorrow, 19th.
Yeah, and it looks like a money run spot for him. You know, he's a horse that's certainly going to need to assert himself. But no, we haven't forgot about Classic Cut. He's 6-1 in the morning line, race 6 tomorrow. 307 Central, and he's drawn to the inside of a 3/4 6 furlong event, $12,500 beaten bilateral. Looks like there's plenty of pace, but let's try and get him back into the charm circle. But no, we haven't forgot about Classic Cut. We just have so much to put in and squeeze into this hour program. Back to the mare front, Diane. Can we touch on Natural Beauty and Community Adjusted babies? How are they progressing?
Yeah, overall, very good. I would say the Violence filly at a Natural Beauty, I think, has progressed a ton. You know, as a younger foal, you know, I would just say she was a little immature, really needed to strengthen up behind, and I would say she's made a good amount of improvement. I think there's still more that can be done, and as she changes physically and grows, I think you'll continue to see her look better, but all is well there. I know Matt O'Connor is planning on going out there hopefully this week or next, so we'll get some updated footage there. And then along with Chanticleer, we're Community Adjusted's babies, Quality Road filly. You know, I think our tone of what we think she can be has been evident. You know, she's always been one that has impressed the team there at Chanticleer, and she's continued to progress that way. We do have, I was talking to some of the reps of Fasig-Tipton today that we're going to have her evaluated for the Saratoga Select Yearling Sale, so that will hopefully happen in the next, I believe they begin in April, those inspections. So, you know, that's the kind of filly that we think she can be. We think she has the pedigree to be there. And think the physical will match. So if not, still think she's a book 1, book 2 Keeneland yearling. So future's bright there. And then all's been well with the Seize the Gray, her second foal. And then we got Forte coming next. Not Forte, I'm sorry. Rapoli, help me out. Why am I drawing a blank?
You blanked me, Joe. I'll give you a minute on that thought. I want to get back to do you have it yet?
I will have it in 1 second.
Okay.
Just give me a second to think.
Christina, I thought this was a great idea. And of course, we'll run that up the flagpole.
Fierceness. What a seed Rapoli. Wrong F, wrong Rapoli.
Well, you still had some vowels in there. So you get a pass for that. But I think this is pretty cool. Owner's picture for all you do, racehorse owners, broodmare bands, both 25 and 26 owners can add their collection. That is awesome. If we can create some sort of a portfolio, as we would like a winner's circle picture. That's a great idea, Christina.
That's a great idea, Christina. We're I know we were planning on getting a photographer out there to December Farms sometime next week. I also don't know if you saw, I believe we do have a event up for next Wednesday on the events page to see those new babies. So if you do have interest, make sure you do register for those events. But yes, we will work on figuring out the best way to do that to have the best photos. So I will put that on my to-do list.
All right. And George, thank you for the question, and great appreciation for all of those who've posted up questions. Of the current stable of 2-year-olds, who are the top 2 to debut early this summer?
Oh gosh. I don't know. The crystal ball, if I had a crystal ball, that's telling me there's 3 that I think could strike early, and that would be, for me, it would be Elevated as 1.
Okay.
Doctorate, just because how forward
Fair.
he's been.
Mm-hmm.
And 3, and hopefully you can back me up here, I was quite impressed with the Jack Christopher colt. I believe
100%.
that we named Absolution. I think he, even from 2.5 or 3 weeks ago from the Ocala showcase until our check-in there, he seems to have the mind. He loves what he's doing out there, and he's kind of that determined sort. And I think he's going to fit right into the Baffert program. I was actually just having a call with Michael Behrens, and I said, hopefully this will be our 2-year-old summer Baffert winner.
All right. And that will do it. And a big thank you to those that have sent those questions in. If we didn't get to your questions, don't hate the player or players. In this particular case, again, there's only so much we can do within the time slot because we have been doing this now for an hour. But I think this is the best way to kind of encapsulate. Thank you, James. And this is once again a labor of love for all of us. And I couldn't be more blessed for the work and the opportunity that we have to go to these sales and being able to interact with each and every one of you, whether it be on MRH Live or perhaps even at the racetrack. And we certainly do appreciate you and all that you do, and never be afraid to hold back some of the opinions and thoughts. We try our best to kind of keep things real on these live shows.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, let's hope we can go. We got to keep the win streak going. So it starts with Classic Cut tomorrow. It
certainly does. 3 in this week with MyRacehorse. Get locked in, of course, with Classic Cut at Oakland tomorrow. We come back with Love Like Lucy on Friday, and then hopefully a stakes victory for Mystical Bell come Sunday. Want to thank not only those that have tuned in on this MRH Live here on Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. We will be back on April 1st. Yep, that's April Fool's Day, and hopefully we won't be cracking any jokes on that particular day. But that'll actually be just as we head into the April sale. But I think we're going to have plenty of content for you. We look forward to it, more mare updates, and a big thank you to, of course, Miss Hannah Bloom, for putting it all together behind the scenes. Until next time, on behalf of Joe Moran, myself, Nick Hines, we'll see you in the winner's circle. Take care, everybody.